At Fragments of Silicon, we know that 4 plus 1 is 5, but 1 plus 1 is series.
Welcome to another installment of Fragments of Silicon. It's our last show of the year. Of course, the year is what, about 2 weeks away from being over?
Something like that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's December 18th as of this broadcast / recording. So, we're all gearing up for the holidays. And with that, we shall move to the news. See who has their holiday plans solidified and who doesn't. And let's see. Twilight, why don't you start us off this week?
All right. Well, today me and my mother went to the next town over to finish up some holiday gift shopping for some family friends, and we had a good time. It was cold and a little flurrying, but that was fine. Let's see now. As for holiday plans, I'm going to be staying with my parents on Christmas Eve, and says it'll be easiest that way. 20-mile road trip back and forth, not exactly ideal. Let's see now. What else?
No, go on.
Oh, I thought somebody was asking something. Anyway, anything else? There hasn't been really much else. I've really been busy with work and whatnot, and that's about it.
Okay. Petty, you're up.
So the hospital is going to drive me insane.
Oh boy.
I contacted my insurance company. They said because of my exception, the physical therapy should be paid for, and the hospital just submitted the paperwork wrong. The hospital is saying, no, it's not covered, even though I have the exception. So, that's fun.
American healthcare.
Yeah. I wish I had an extra $900 to pay for physical therapy, So yeah, I have a doctor's appointment on Monday, so if they don't have this straightened out by then, I'm going to the financial office, and that's going to be fun. As far as everything else, not a whole lot's been going on. I have my Christmas shopping done, but I don't really know if we have any plans yet, because my parents work Christmas Day but have Christmas Eve off. So, I don't know. And as far as gaming goes, not a whole lot. We don't know what we're doing, if we're doing any more raids in the next 2 weeks because of the holidays.
Mm-hmm.
So I may have to find some other games to play during the off season.
Right. I mean, there are choices.
Yes, there are many choices. And I guess that's it for me. So next victim.
Well, that'd be you, Alex.
Not a whole lot going on. I'm planning on doing as much as possible of my Christmas shopping tomorrow. We're going down to Massachusetts. I've already done some, but like parents, some of my other friends. This Sunday we're going down to big family Christmas thing in Massachusetts, so that'll be draining but hopefully fun. And then on Christmas Day, we usually do quiet and pretty much stay home, although my sister usually comes up, and I haven't heard she wasn't planning to this year. So, Video game wise, continuing on playing Pokemon and planning on cracking open Shovel Knight Treasure Trove soon because I'm behind on that.
Well,
I mean, cracking open King Knight's campaign.
yeah. Well, I mean, we are reviewing that in Showdown for next year.
Right,
So.
but we have a couple weeks, so
Yes.
not
And
currently a problem.
Apparently, you're gonna need it because apparently this is the longest campaign of them all.
Oh, wow.
This is what I've heard. I haven't gotten to King of Cards myself because I'm enjoying not having to play the games for review a little bit. So. Anyway, anything else, Galax?
That is all pretty much.
All right. This is my go. Well, let's see. Well, I mean, my Christmas shopping's already done. Like, you know, as well as already got my gift. It's the laptop. Though I did get a shirt from like my brother. So that was nice. As far as Christmas plans, having pizza for Christmas because, well, like my mother got hit with a extraordinarily large bill, let's say, and you know needs to keep costs down. Sometimes that happens. This is life as an adult.
Yep. Okay, confirmed.
It's fine. It's like really haven't done the big Christmas thing ever since, you know, pretty much every relative other than mother left the area. So, you know, there are pluses and minuses to this approach. Like, anyway, and yeah, that's about it for the news. So, merrily, we shall be rolling along to the interview portion of the broadcast. And joining us this week is Christopher Park of Arcen Games. Am I pronouncing that right?
Arcen.
Arcen. Okay. Anyway, I'm glad you could join us today, with us today. And we'd like to start things by asking the people behind the games, behind the studio and whatnot, what got them interested in video games, both on a professional and a personal level?
Oh, that's a good one, actually. I've been doing this 10 years and nobody's ever asked me that. I would say I started out on the Atari 2600. We had the disk drive and everything, and my dad worked at Nortel at the time and for most of his career. And back then, you know, it was the mid '80s, and so the video game crash had happened, but then the stuff had sprung back up again, and there were a lot of people creating what later became shareware. And there were a lot of people at a lot of the large tech companies that were just like creating hobby projects, although they weren't really called that. They were just games, and we would get them on 5 1/4 inch floppies. And I never really knew where they came from exactly. I mean, they came from his work somewhere, sometimes he bought them. Usually they were kind of like traded around the various, staff and so forth there did. And so we always had this huge selection. I mean, several hundred games of stuff, most of it not worth more than 5 or 10 minutes of your time, but as like a 4 and 5 year old, it was really fascinating to be able to say, okay, these are the ones I really, really like. These are ones where, like, okay, I can get through the blue DOS-ish screen and load up this thing off a disk. And this isn't as fun as the Seahorse game or Riley's Mine or whatever, but I've never seen this before. Like, it doesn't have instructions, it doesn't have a rule book, it doesn't have a manual. Like, how does this work? Let's see if we can figure it out. And so that was kind of my earliest experiences with games, and that was certainly hooking. And then once the regular Nintendo Entertainment System came out, then that was just like, holy crap, like everything was different, and Super Nintendo and on from there. But I never gave up the PC side of it, but moved into the good old fancy CGA graphics, and then their EGA graphics, and on up to VGA, and eventually, not to brag, but SVGA. It was some pretty fancy stuff. So
yes, it was. And there's a whole bunch of people who have no idea what these acronyms mean.
Mm-hmm. Yep. 4 colors, 8 colors, 16 colors, then 256, and eventually 16,000. Oh my God, it's amazing. Yeah.
The things you got excited for back in the day.
Yeah, I know. Not seeing Harrison Ford quite so grainy on this new monitor on the Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom game. It was really not great in retrospect, but I had a lot of fun with it early on.
No, it's my least favorite LucasArts adventure.
I'm not even sure. No, it's not even. I don't even think that was a LucasArts game. This was probably an EA title, actually, back when EA meant something different and had the 3 shapes as their.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
The Last Crusade game.
Yeah, yep. Yeah, the Temple of Atlantis was good, and that was good 10 years later than the one I'm thinking of.
Yeah. Anyway. Right, so how did this passion eventually envelope you into, professional development?
By accident, really. I was always interested in games. I started doing level design for a game that, if you guys have ever heard of it, you'll be the first. It was called Demon Stalkers, and came out in 1989. I got it around that year or so, and I just kind of played it at first. It's kind of like Gauntlet, but with actual like levels and like 100 floors, and it was a little more than Gauntlet, but it's more or less that idea. And but it came with a level editor, and you could remake all 100 floors. And so when I was about 9, I started getting into that, and then wound up making, I think, about 60 of the floors before I got bored, and share those around on the fancy new, 3.25 inch or 3.5 inch, whatever it is. Oh my God, I'm showing senility, I guess, but the bigger capacity, but smaller floppy disks that we would share around with friends, and look, here's levels, and then later on, Forgotten Realms, Unlimited Adventures. It was one of the earlier D&D games on the PC, really, way before like Baldur's Gate or anything. It really had more in common with something like Legends of Grimrock or something like that, with the style of movement through dungeons, and that we could share online on AOL, and there's all sorts of stuff like that. But then I got into ROM hacking and did a lot of things like what would now be considered like Kaizo stuff for Mario, or but I was doing that 1998, 1999, way before that was a thing. And so, had, 10,000 or so downloads of that. And that was interesting, but I had read enough about the games industry by then to know that I did not want to work in it. I did not want to work for one of the big companies. I didn't want to go move wherever. I didn't want to, be involved in those sort of hours or that sort of pay or any of the sort of things that was going on there. So, and besides, I wanted to be a novelist anyway. This was just like my hobby, along with like 3D art and some other stuff. So I went and wound up starting a computer science degree, but then found myself working in the industry in the early 2000s and doing quite well already, and becoming like a team lead, and later like a kind of somewhat company lead, and for business software. And I was like, you know what, this computer science program it was a good school in NC State, but it was just out of date, and I was like, it's no good. I'll do a business degree. That'll be a lot more helpful. So I did, and it was. And then it was like, well, here's my hobby. My dad and I and my uncle and one of my uncle's colleagues. We would play strategy games every weekend, every Friday and Saturday throughout most of the 2000s, and we would learn the game well enough to where we just would destroy the AI, but we didn't want to play against each other. We wanted to play co-op, and then we'd have to move on. And I remember after we did that with Supreme Commander, I was pretty frustrated that we were having to leave behind all these really nice quality of life features that they had, like the camera that could zoom like way the heck out, and the icons that you could see from way far away, and all the sort of stuff like that, like automated looping build queues. I mean, there's so many things that they pioneered in that Total Annihilation, which came like 10 years before Supreme Commander. But so I was having to move away from that to find something new, and finally I was just kind of like, F it, I'm gonna build my own, and this would just be something for us to do, for us to play. And so because I had done some other hobby games, 4 or 5, but nothing that I wanted to release. Mostly they were platformers and stuff, and I had the indie scene was like World of Goo and Braid, and that was about it. Minecraft did not exist yet, and like World of Goo, Braid, they made a bunch of money, and like nobody else made any money. Was kind of the impression that I had. There were some people that could make a living at it. Dwarf Fortress was already around, but really under the radar, and so on. And so I made the game. Was still at that point I was a CTO of the company that I was working at, doing software for the affordable housing industry, and was heading in towards parenthood, and knew that was like in the plans for the next couple of years. I'd been married for 8+ years at that point, and I was like, all right, so the life is happening. If I'm gonna do anything like creative before kids, now's the time. And I kind of realized, hey, I can maybe hang my shingle out, make a few bucks at least. And then like it just happened to coincide with the indie revolution, where it was like, oh, Minecraft came out that same summer. Oh, this other stuff came out, and then Steam took a few games, didn't take mine, and then after a lot of finagling and kind of chart topping at Stardock's Impulse store, mainly because of similarities with Sins of a Solar Empire in terms of audience, I would say. Mm-hmm. Then that plus some other factors, Steam was like, okay, you can come in. And I was like, what, really? And that, of course, was a career maker. And so that in 2009, that December, myself and then the composer that I worked with, we went full time and been here ever since. And it's combines all my passions, all of them. So it's kind of funny. It's like I was setting myself up for it, training myself my whole life by accident, but the market didn't exist until I had already done the training.
I suppose so. I mean, 2009 was, when the modern day indie movement was picking up steam. Mm-hmm. Pun intended.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, there was when I got onto Steam with AI War the First, it was the 74th or 76th game, not indie game on Steam, period, since 2004.
It's like the more things change, the more they really, really change.
Yeah. I mean, and so like even as late as 2011, I want to say, in like April 2011, when I released Valley of That Wind, which was my 3rd game on Steam. We released that in April, and it stayed in the top 10 new releases, like not like quality or something, but just like top 10 most recent, at the very top of the page. That's where that used to be. It used to be like above the fold. There wasn't a capsule rotator. And so the very top thing on there was, here's the 10 most recent things. It stayed on the top 10 for 3 weeks, I want to say. And it stayed in that like small, like you could page through without actually loading on the page for like the 30 most recent things for like a month and a half, something crazy like that. And it is obviously very different now. It's it's been very different pretty much every year with Steam, but
And yet, the more things change, the more they stay the same. Now with the Epic Game Store in existence.
yeah, that's an interesting beast. I mean, there were so many stores. I don't even think people realized how many stores there were.
Yeah.
And none of them, I mean, and by so many stores, I mean, I had partnerships literally with, I would say, I would say 20 different legal entities, and a lot of those were white label stores that would brand themselves as like, this is the Yahoo game store, this is the whatever game store, this is the, Excite page game store, whatever. And it was like one legal entity, but they had like 200 things. I'm not even counting that. Those were like individual things, and they just were coming up. There was a new one every couple of months there from 2000, sometime in 2009 through 2012 or so. And then that just kind of stopped because everybody realized, we can't do that. And they all collapsed and went away. And it's been a while since we've seen anything new, since, like Desura went away.
Really, I think the last serious attempt was like Games for Windows Live. I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
once that collapsed and went away, it really was just Steam and GOG.
Which the Microsoft Store, it does have its own exclusives and so forth. If you want to get the Age of Empires remake, you've got to go through there. If you want to get the Minecraft Windows edition, the Bedrock edition, which is like better performance wise and stuff than the Java one, but doesn't have mods the same way. So pick your poison. You have to go through there. So there's stuff, and there's the Apple App Store thing, and
yeah, there's definitely stores around. It's just in terms of hegemony, it's Steam, then GOG, then Humble.
Yeah.
It's like and now EGS.
Right. Yeah, and there's been other ones. I mean, like, Gamersgate's hung in there. They're still real small. Green Man Gaming is hung in there, and they're definitely more sizable. So there's a number of, still half a dozen partnerships that are generate something.
True enough. It's just, I find it interesting that there are storefronts out there who want to, rededicate Steam's Arcea 10 years ago. I suppose it has its ups, but it also has its downs.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. The really harsh curation was, I mean, it's great for me. I was on the inside of that. So, I mean, being on the inside of the garden wall, I mean, that was enormous for me. But it was not a good thing in a generalized sense. Like, it was too much. There was kind of there was never really a truly balanced period. You know what I mean? There was never a period where everything that deserved to be on there got on there, and nothing that probably shouldn't have been on there wasn't getting on there. There was always some stuff.
I don't think you can ever obtain that, quite frankly.
No.
It's like it's going to be one or the other. You're either going to have the walled garden. It's like great games are not going to get onto that service. I'm like, or you're going to have, the floodgates are open, not just like Steam, but you've got like mobile devices.
Yeah.
You're just going to have, the chaff with the wheat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's interesting. The Switch eShop, I find, I think the hurdles are high enough for that. There's some chaff there. There's no doubt, but it's not like the Wii eShop or the Wii U eShop or anything like that. And it's certainly not like mobile, and it's not even like Steam. There's a much, much better ratio of wheat to chaff. But interestingly, like so many of the stores, they suffer with discoverability. So all these games I've noticed go on sale just so that they're visible at all, because there's literally zero way to find a game on the Switch eShop if you want to go find it unless you search for it specifically. You can't just like go browse by genre or any of these other sort of basic things that like Steam has. So like a major AAA.
Sometimes you kind of can, but even then it doesn't show many at a time. So
and it doesn't show everything. It doesn't even show like sort by recent releases. There are there's a few things, but it's so painfully limited. So Epic Game Store looks pretty advanced by that standard, I guess.
Yeah, I suppose.
I don't know. The Switch thing doesn't yell at you if you like try to check out with more than one thing at a time.
You can't. Well, you can only check out with one thing at a time on the Switch unless you've got DLC from one thing that you've checked off, and it so there's that.
Yeah, it's like call them both underdeveloped. I'd say.
I call them all underdeveloped. I mean, no disrespect intended to any of this stuff. Like right at this point, like colleagues that I consider friends at all of these stores, not Epic and not Switch, but like at Humble, at Green Man, at Steam, at GOG, and all that. Really good people there, and they're working really hard. But there's like always stuff that could be done, and it's like Amazon. Believe it or not, Amazon tried to get into the market. They were one of those stores. 2014. Yeah, they did. They started a store. I had an agreement with them. I spent 2 months with them making them make amendments to the freaking contract because it was so wretched. And after 2 months of amendments, I kind of forgot about it and then just didn't bother signing it. And then they folded another couple of months after that. It was ridiculous. And that was the level of like quality that they approached this with. Like their contract was an absolute mess and had lots of stuff that was gonna like breach other contracts if it was left in, and it was just like, oh my god. And then they barely tried. It was weird. It was really weird.
I mean, given the state of Amazon Game Studios, I'm not surprised.
Yeah, I mean, I think they had like 5 people working on it or something. It was really a small undertaking, but
sounds like it.
Yeah, that was why I didn't pay more attention. I mean, you'd think Amazon, you're like, oh yes, I'm gonna get right on that. And I was like, I'll do it in between other things. Like I got stuff to do. That's a weird thing to say to think about Amazon, right? I mean, that's something's up.
I suppose. I mean, here's the thing. Like, even the mega corporations sometimes stumble in specific spheres.
Sure.
I mean, if you want an example of that, Google right now just is fumbling hard with the Stadia.
Yeah. Well, I mean, come on. That is in my opinion, based on everything that I've ever done with gaming, they're up against the laws of physics. I mean, in a very real sense. I mean, regardless of the speed of your machines or whatever else, light speed is literally the limiter. And unless there's a data center within X number of miles of wherever you are, and assuming that your electronics on both ends are operating at 100%, instantaneous perfection, which of course they don't, you still are going to have more input lag than an action gamer is going to find acceptable. The fact that they've hit like 200 to 400 milliseconds of input lag on stuff is actually really surprising to me. I've been experimenting around with like the PS4 remote play and stuff with, first of all, with the PS Vita, that works terribly. But then with like my like Windows laptops and so forth on the same Wi-Fi network, really nice Wi-Fi network going 5 gigahertz stuff for about 100 feet. And it does well. There's not like input lag I can notice. There's a few little things, but it's like, even under those conditions, it's still not quite seamless. Stadia had no chance, in my opinion. It's just, I don't even know why it doesn't make sense to me. Somebody early on in that should have gone, but what about the speed of light?
Well, their apparent answer to that was negative input. And what they mean by that is guessing, like literally guessing what your next move is going to be.
I know that, and that is how we do input smoothing with networked multiplayer games. And if anybody there had any experience developing networked multiplayer games, they would have gone, nope, 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 no, nope.
There's a lot that should have been noped at Stadia.
Yeah, I mean, I would love it if that would work. Are you kidding me? It'd be great, but we need like wormholes for this to work, in my opinion. Or or just build me a beta data center in my backyard, I guess. Why is there a beta center in my backyard? Why don't I just have a computer? Oh, right.
Yeah,
I do.
Get some tachyon particles.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. Anyway, before we get too far away, we should really talk about your latest game, and that is AI War 2. Now, for those who might not know, what is the AI War series?
So basically, it's David and Goliath is the situation, or an Ender's Game simulator is kind of what I also think of it as. But you are rather, it's a PvE, player versus environment sort of game where you and possibly some friends in co-op. The co-op is not a feature in the sequel yet, but it will be. It was in the first game. You and some friends sit down. You've got one lonely little sad planet, and this artificial intelligence has taken over the entire galaxy. And you must go and basically kill their king type unit if we're thinking chess. You don't have to defeat their entire army. If you try, you're going to die. But it's all about capturing some territory, capturing new weapons, capturing a bunch of other strategic goods, essentially, like new fleets, new technologies. You can hack the AI, a bunch of other sort of things that are kind of mid-tier objectives that get you closer to being able to take down the kind of big bad at the end. Problem is that every time you do any of those things, the AI notices a little bit more. You're alive by the graces of it not caring. You're just like an ant on its window, and it just doesn't care. And the more you mess with it, the more it starts to care, because the ant that crawls onto your hand or onto your face, you suddenly, kill it. And so your job is to balance how much it notices you. It's not a stealth game, but it's certainly one of opportunity cost, basically. And so balance how much it notices you versus what you're able to capture, and then you try and go for the kill. And it's dramatic up until the very end, because it still outnumbers you maybe 10,000 to 1 at the end. It starts out, that's probably overstating, maybe 2,000 to 1. It starts out outnumbering you something like 40,000 to 1, and you gradually even the odds, and you're a guerrilla fighter, and it gets real tense right at the end, and a lot of people lose. They've been playing for like 8 to 13 hours or whatever game time, and then lose right at the end, which to me is such a fun thing, because in most strategy games, it's a matter of the beginning is hard, and then eventually there's a tipping point, and then your victory is assured as long as you don't screw up too big, and there's not a real big like curveball thrown at you. And then really by the very, very late game, you're just going through the motions, and there's the satisfaction of you're blowing up all the stuff for the enemies or whatever. That's great, but you're gonna win, and you're just going through the motions. And that doesn't happen with AI War, because it is ready to kick your teeth in until the very last second. And sometimes it comes down to that, where it's charging at you and you blow it up, and it's like, oh my God, my shields were at like 30%. So
Right. And I suppose this is where the fusion of RTS and grand strategy comes with the AI stuff.
Yeah, the grand strategy is really about how you go about your decision making. Like in an RTS, this controls for the most part like an RTS. Certainly when you're looking at a planet, it controls like an RTS. And units are more or less produced like an RTS. There's some streamlining in there because you have way more units than your typical RTS. You might have I don't know, 8,000 units, and you might have them in several different battle groups that are on completely different ends of the galaxy that you're managing at once. Maybe some of them are just fighting in an automated fashion on their own based on your instructions, and you just ignore them while you're focusing on something more important where the odds are less in your favor. And so the grand strategy element comes from some of the fact that you can kind of step out. And I mean, me personally, unless it's a really close battle, by the time I've gotten into battle, I mostly let it do its thing on its own, which is backwards for an RTS, but absolutely normal for a grand strategy game because you got other things to be thinking about. Are you kidding me? There's the logistics, there's the economy, there's choosing the next target. There's, oh my God, is he sneaking around me? And, I need to bring in this other fleet and pay attention to the fight of that one because the warden is, or the hunter is trying to, slip around because it saw an opening since I moved something out of position. And, grand strategy games tend to be something where there's really, really long-term thinking beyond, there's some resources. I'm going to go get those resources. Okay. There's no other resources. Those are the closest ones to me next. And you know what I mean?
Yeah. Paradox.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you've got to, then that can be intimidating for some people where they're like, all right, early game, I get it. I'm through here. I understand the mechanics. I feel what's going on. Middle game. Well, I need to kill that guy. He's big and scary. I'm not. So I'm going to what? And that can combating that feeling has been like our number one thing. So we have the tutorials that walk people through some of the thinking of it. There's in-game tips and so forth. And then there's this whole Intel tab over there on the left that shows you things you've discovered that are of interest. And you can mark them as like a high priority or a low priority so that you can remember like, okay, I can't get that thing right now, but I do want to get it like later. That's in my long-term plan. So you can kind of mentally take notes and it marks it on the galaxy map for you and all that sort of thing. But you might see something that you're like, that thing's totally going to be mine in 5 hours, and it might not be 5 hours of real time because a lot of times this thing can fast forward at no extra CPU cost, which I love, and so you can run it at 10 times the speed for regardless of what your computer's like. So when there's not a whole lot going on, if it's a little bit slow, just pop the plus button a couple of times or hit the little cheetah button and, pop it on. It's like SimCity. You know what I mean? You can run SimCity at a faster speed or at a slower speed or pause it and think about it. And personally for me with like SimCity, I play on the fastest speed or paused. And I kind of do something pretty similar with AI War.
And was it a difficult task getting these grand strategy elements to work with the RTS elements?
Kind of. I kind of backed into it. I went. I mean, originally it was going to be a turn-based game back in 2008, the first AI War, and then it was going to be like, it was all player versus player stuff. And so my uncle, my dad, and my uncle's colleague, we were playing against each other, and it worked really, really differently. And we just went through. That became our weekly thing. We just would. I would work on it in the evenings and whatnot during the week, and then we would play on the weekends and talk about what was fun and what was not, and where people were getting stuck, and kind of ruminate on things, and then come back. And after about 4 or so months of that, I was like, you know what we really need? It's like we really need like the AI to be just like everywhere, and for us to, be fighting against like needs to be more like kind of like a puzzle that we're unraveling, not some sort of fight of equals, because realistically the best times we ever had playing PvE before that were things like Empire Earth, the first one, when the AI was like ridiculously overpowered, and we'd set it to be like a cheaty AI and like more of them than us, and it had like way more tech than us, and we were just like holding on by the skin of our teeth, and we had like a 10-hour game one time that was spread across several play sessions, obviously, where we were just trying to crack the coastline of this AI that was entrenched. And thinking about those sort of experiences, like, you know what? It doesn't really matter what the AI is actually doing. It matters what it feels like is happening to us. So why don't I throw away any notion of trying to make it pretend like it's a human, and let's make this like the evil empire that we're fighting against. Like, let's make this thematic. Let's make this actually, I want to feel like Ender Wiggin. I want to feel outnumbered in every battle, and I'm surviving because I'm smart. That's what I wanted to feel like. And so that was something that changed the design dramatically back in March of 2009. And then from there, the grand strategy elements just kind of showed up. I didn't really plan on it per se, but it was just like, well, we need some middle term objectives. And like, for instance, originally there were 16, I think, ship lines in the first game that you could build from, like kind of grunt small ship lines, and you could just build them all. I was like, why make you choose? It's like, you just have them all. And that turned out to be a terrible idea, because even though we knew it intimately, the four of us, all of us, myself included, had analysis paralysis about it. It's like, well, we can build all of any of them, so which one do we? I don't know, just build kind of a random mishmash of all of them. Why not? And so then we were just kind of just playing with whatever. So actually then it was like, all right, well, it would be a lot more interesting if we pared this down to a core 3, and then you get one at random that you can choose depending on your preferences, and then later you'll go and capture some new ship lines. That'll be a nice middle term objective versus just the one objective way at the end of the whole map. And then other sort of middle term objectives started coming in, and that's kind of how it turned more grand strategic. It was a very natural process of like, hey, we're kind of overwhelmed here, let's parse this out a little bit more. Oh, hey, it's kind of nice to have goals in the middle. And then it was like, well, now there's a lot of goals in the middle, and we have to choose between them because you can't do everything. And hey, I think that's actually kind of the point of this game, turns out. So it's kind of funny what comes out by accident, really. And I would say by accident, it's by rapid prototyping and just extreme repetitive playtesting.
And was this something that grew out of the original AI Wars, or is the melding part of the sequel only?
Oh no, that was in the original. The sequel really didn't change up from a truly macro point of view. It didn't really change up anything, which was the goal. What changed in the sequel so much, and this was, oh my God, was ridiculous, but was trying to make it so that after 5 years of like post-game development, post-release development with the first game, it was so fiddly to play, and it was kind of like Factorio or something, where you would just have these like intricate economies that were routing ships all over the place. It was just exhausting, and I didn't feel like it added to the strategy. It was fun, sort of. I mean, for a while, and certainly some people loved that, but it was distracting from the strategy, honestly, because it was like you'd make a decision. It's like, okay, now I need to design like a circuit board of like mechanics. It's like Minecraft or something, like build a redstone circuit to like carry out your decision that you made 10 minutes ago. And oh, now it's been an hour. Okay, what was that decision again? Oh, the circumstances have changed. Well, great. Well, this is what we're doing. And that's annoying. So trying with the sequel, the goal was, okay, well, let's make it prettier. First of all, let's make it more modern and able to handle even more ships than before. But let's keep the depth, make it just as deep strategically, but make it so that it's not so freaking unapproachable, and so that all the things that I was absolutely sick of, just really bored of trying to, okay, I've made my decision, just do it. Like let's go. Why are you preparing? You're always preparing. Just go. That whole thing. Spaceballs. But and so that was kind of one of many overriding goals of this game, was to make the time between your decision to do something and your ability to do it much shorter, and to make it much clearer how to do something. So like capturing a planet doesn't take like 4 steps. You have to build a colony ship and then send it and then build the thing and then do the blah 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 blah. The stuff that you've got over there that's killed the planet, you just on the sidebar hit build, and there you go. That's the end of that. And it doesn't really cut down on the strategy, and that's good because we were making the AI way more difficult anyway. So that gave us a situation where we were able to capitalize on that.
I see. And I suppose the question is, you've streamlined stuff to, get it back down to a more basic, approachable level that somebody without an MBA can play. How do you avoid that problem in the future? Like, is there going to be less post-game support for AI War 2?
Most of the problems were core structural problems. Mm-hmm. They were at the very root of the design. And so if you look at AI War 1 versus AI War 2, at the very basics of like, okay, I'm going to use Mario as an example, but it's like, how do you make Mario move around? And it's like, okay, well, so you've got this trackball, and when you roll the trackball really fast upwards, Mario jumps upwards. And when you move it slowly to the side, he walks to the side. Now you've got this other joystick, and when you do this, like the camera will come with you, and it's like, whoa. Like if you've got that as the premise, like playing Mario is going to be freaking hard. When it's like you push the button to the right and Mario goes to the right, it's like, okay, cool. Like this is a fundamentally simple thing. Like I get this, but then there's a bunch of stuff you can still do with that, where it's like, all right, you push the B button and he jumps, hold it a little longer, or A button, sorry, A button and he jumps, hold it a little bit longer, he jumps higher. If you run, there's the combinations of stuff. We know play Mario, but there's so many different things that can be done even with such a simple framework. And this is obviously still a far more complicated framework than something like Mario, but it doesn't require us to the core essence of it has been changed from something that is more akin to like the weird trackball thing that didn't make any sense that I described, to moving to something like, well, of course, why wouldn't you push right and Mario goes right? And moving from something, this was a grand strategy game that played like an RTS game, and that's kind of like having grown-up shoes that are the size of a toddler's shoes. There's a problem there, like that doesn't fit fully. And so this had to become something else. And so a lot of the RTS economy trappings fell away. And then it was like, what do you do instead? And it's like, well, you just have the ships auto build. Like that's what you're going to do 95% of the, like in general, that was the sort of thing. It's like the decisions you're going to make 95% of the time, have that be automated. That stuff just happens. And then there's controls where you can go in, and it's like, if there's 5% of the time that you want to do something different, you can go in and say, no, this time I don't want that one to build. Thank you. that was a really radical departure. And there's actually way more that we can do in this game that we were hamstrung with the other engine that we just couldn't do, like building other factions in and so forth. So this one has like the nano cost, which is, this like computer virusy thing that's kind of Borg-like in some other ways, and takes over ships and can take over the galaxy from the AI actually, and you can fight with them as your ally, fight against them, have a three-way war, whatever. There's all these other complicated ones as well, and a lot of it comes down to the meta. The meta can become more complicated. I mean, if you think of something like, I don't know, League of Legends or something like that, they don't need to add endless, they don't need like, I don't know, 14 or 15 abilities per hero per match in order to make there be like a rich meta and situation going on a per match basis. There can be like lots of heroes. That's a good thing. That makes the meta interesting and something that's different each time, and you never know quite what situation you're getting into. But you don't have to make it so that like right in front of you there's umpteen knobs. So we actually have loose plans for what the next 3 expansions are going to be like, as well as a bunch of other just free post-game support. And it's been really ripe field for that. We had hit the end of the engine with the first game, which is why we stopped making expansions for it after the first 6, because it was like, it had been 5 years, 6 expansions. We couldn't do any more really, because we were just hemmed in by the technology and the core design, and the new game needed to start fresh and not have that sort of legacy baggage.
And what sort of port are you looking to do for AI War 2? Like, do you anticipate another 5-year cycle, or?
That is a really tough question at the moment, specifically because of what we've been talking about earlier with the market, because one of the things that as things change, one of the things that Valve changed back in 2018 in October, it doesn't get talked about as much as some of the other changes they've made. They had a bug where they accidentally made it so that only like really recent and really popular stuff was showing up. So like everybody was getting recommended. I don't remember what it was. It was like Call of Duty and whatever, pretty much. It was like just like stuff that was in the top 10 bestsellers already. All the recommended and if you like this game, you might also like was all only that. And it's like, whoops. It took them about a month to fix it. And they said, oh, yeah, we fixed it. And they kind of did. And they mostly did. But they also made a change, which was that they started strongly devaluing anything that was an older product. Didn't matter if it was similar. And it kind of makes sense with the number of games they've got coming into their store all the time. And they have openly said, yes, we made this change. But they have also said, yeah, we went back to the way it was with October. But all of us with really long sales charts, we can go, yeah, no, you didn't. Because they've said both things. It's actually kind of confusing, but yeah, that it is what it is. They went back, but they also made a change. So what that means is nobody quite knows what the long tail is like on games anymore. Is there a 5-year dev cycle possible now, or are the algorithms going to eat it? For anybody who's familiar with like the YouTube algorithms and the way that those sort of creators are going, is a video that I made 5 years ago that was like an educational video and was really great and really long, and a lot of people, it's got 2 million hits and lots of people keep coming to it. Is that still going to show up in search results? And it's like, nope, not anymore, not with YouTube now. And it's kind of that situation with Steam now ish. But exactly what is the cutoff point? I don't know. Is that going to be the case in a year? I don't know. If you release DLC for a product, does that refresh your kind of staleness counter? I don't know that either. And so a lot of it's going to be kind of data um, tracking. We're going to be doing our first expansion for the game in February. That'll be when it comes out. And then we will probably do another 2 expansions next year because we really have a lot that we want to build on it. And it's not clear that the long tail, like in other words, sales that can sustain keeping the lights on, it's not clear that that's going to stay for more than a year or so. It's just like, well, we can at least get that done unless something else drastically changes with the store. But assuming the store stays pretty much what it is, then we can make it there. And beyond that, it's going to depend on the data we collect over the next year and what changes Valve makes both publicly and not publicly that we kind of tease out of, the data that we have access to. So assuming that the answer is positive and that Valve does a great job and games are allowed to keep finding their audience and all that sort of stuff, then sure, I would expect to see a similar life cycle. As it is, it looks like it might be compressed from what was a 5-year cycle with 6 expansions into something that is similar in scope, but just over a shorter period of time of 2 or 3 years. I'm guessing that's probably all that's going to be kind of allowed in the modern store ecosystem. That's my guess, but I don't really know. But I certainly intend for this game to eclipse the first one in, size. As far as right now, the game is kind of about the size of the first game and 2 expansions just with the base game alone. And by the time we get 3 expansions in, it's just no contest in terms of like the quality and meat of content that we have planned for this one, because we built from the ground up planning on expansions starting back in 2016, and the store ecosystem has changed a lot since then, making us go, well, yeah.
Right. And does that way of thinking apply to other storefronts?
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, I would say, let me see. Let me give you a real number. I would say somewhere between 82 and 84% of our income comes from Valve. Uh-huh. So when you look at the other storefronts, they're a nice bonus. They're a nice windfall. And I love supporting the other storefronts, particularly GOG and Humble, because I think they do really good stuff, and I hope to see their market share grow. And who knows what'll happen with Epic Games Store? I don't know. I've never spoken to them. They've never approached me. So
I mean, from what I know, that's kind of how it works. With some exceptions, it's like if they're interested in your game, they'll approach you. But if they're not, then they're not.
Right. And that's what I mean that is the situation right now, but they're in a storefront curation building mode right now. And they have explicitly turned down things that they were interested in if they couldn't have as an exclusive. So their strategy for the moment has been pretty clear, but that strategy I don't think is what they're going to be doing 3 years from now. They might, but I think they're going to be a more mature storefront or gone by then. I'm assuming they're still going to be around. So I think they're just going to be a wholly different beast, and I have no idea what it's going to be. And so maybe that will be this, more curated, but still pretty open, optimal Garden of Eden bastion of everybody's happiness in 3 years. And we look back at this time where people were annoyed and we kind of laugh and go, ha ha, because remember when we all thought that way about Steam, where it was annoying. And oh my god, it took up so much RAM on my 512 meg of RAM Half-Life 2 machine. You know, it's like, why do I have to have this stupid Steam thing on here just to install this game I bought on CD? I don't think it was even DVD. It was like, stupid Steam thing in 2004. And well, you know, things are pretty different. So I don't really know.
That is like, you know, it's hard to pretend what things will look like in even 3 years from now. Like, you know, except that I think it's safe to say that Steam is still going to be around. Yeah.
Oh yeah, they're not going anywhere, and I don't, unless they want to. Epic is not going anywhere either, and I don't think GOG or Humble's going anywhere either. And I think that all four of those storefronts, in my opinion, have really cool things that they could be getting up to in the next 3 years that could make the entire landscape shift a lot. So maybe 50% or 40% of my income is coming from, you know, Valve, and the rest is spread between two of the other three or all three of the other three. I don't know. Mm-hmm. And if that's the case, then suddenly their metrics and their long tail and whatnot matter a lot more. Right now, they're pretty, not Epic Game Store, but in terms of the other two, I would say that their kind of long tail is similar to Valve. It's pretty much aped it in terms of discoverability of titles based on age. Not exactly, but it's close enough that I guess, and I have less data there too, so I feel less confident making a sweeping statement on those particular stores. I mean, been working with them for a while, but not with as many games.
Right. And now, in terms of computer platforms, is AI Wars Windows, Mac, and Linux?
Yeah, all three. So Mac is a bit scary at the moment with their stuff that they're doing with trying to make everything be notarized and lock stuff down. And if I'm a little worried they're gonna go too far down that rabbit hole and cause some major problems for. I mean, they already are with the removal of 32-bit support. So I could see dropping Mac as a platform in a few years if they, not for existing games, but for future titles, if they're doing some really unfriendly stuff at the moment. I'm really hoping they stop. I'm really hoping they stop. Like, it's okay right now. At the moment, everything's good, but they seem to be heading in a direction that's really anti-competitive. And I think we're going to see fewer Mac games, and instead it's just like, oh yeah, it's the Windows and Linux games. It's like, why would that be the thing? Like, come on, Apple. So
I couldn't tell you exactly, but it's like, that is kind of in Apple's nature. They've always been very anti-openness, let's say.
Yeah, they have.
So it wouldn't be surprising that they would move in those directions in the first place. But I guess we'll see. Like, I really don't know Mac development all that well. And, you know, honestly, people talk about it on the show a lot less than, say, Linux development.
Yeah. I find Linux more straightforward, mainly because I'm working with Unity, and mainly because there's not any company like messing with stuff. You know what I mean? Like, things happen and there's driver problems and whatever. But I don't push into the realms of things where if you stay with the equivalent of OpenGL 4.2 or lower, you don't get into tessellation, you don't get into, ray trace shadows or anything like that, and you're pretty safe on Linux. Honestly, you can, assuming you're working within Unreal or Unity or one of the engines that strongly supports it, you're good to go pretty much. You start messing with something like tessellation or compute shaders or things like that. Those are really cool tools, but they are above OpenGL 4.2, and they are spotty. You're going to have a bad time.
All right. As much as I'd like to continue this conversation, we are running low on time. So my final question will be, what updates are coming in the immediate future?
Well, we're in the process of adding 139 achievements at the moment. They're all done in the code. That actually, once we get off the cast, I'm going to push that update live. All the achievements won't be showing visibly on Steam right as well, because we have to enter those manually one by one. So you're going to be coming over the next 3 nights. So a bunch of achievements. We're going to be getting into multiplayer beta in the next month or so. There's some, actually tonight also coming out is some major improvements to some of the automated AI for ship versus ship battles. Basically, ships that are in kind of an automated battling mode got ridiculously smarter in this upcoming release. So yours and the enemies. So that should make for some, and your allies if you're playing with computer controlled friends. So that makes for some really interesting new situations.
Okay. And I'll see if my colleagues here have any questions of their own to ask at this point.
I think mine have all been answered.
Mine have been answered.
Yeah, pretty good.
All right, then. Well, Chris, I'd like to thank you for taking time out of your schedule and being with us today. It was lovely having you on the program, and we look forward to seeing what happens next with AI Wars, too.
Thanks. I really appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
No problem. It's like we might have you on again, like when an expansion pack is ready to go or whatever.
Yeah.
Anyway, the game is AI Wars 2. It's available on PC, Windows, Mac, and Linux. You can pick it up from either GOG or Steam, and it's currently on sale for $11, if I'm remembering correctly.
That sounds right.
Yeah, $11.99. Though that sale will end as of this particular recording tomorrow morning, or actually afternoon, depending on your location. It ends when Valve does their daily update, which is at 11 a.m., 1 p.m. So,
don't stress too much about the end date, though.
Duly noted. But the regular price will be $19.99. And Petty, play us to the next segment. I know we're running a bit long this week, but it's the last show of the year, so we can afford the time. Anyway, so this week's topic of discussion is we are going to be talking about at least what we can of the next generation of consoles, the ones that aren't out yet. Because contrary to what anyone might think, the 9th generation started with the Nintendo Switch. The Wii U was just such a, fantastic bomb that Nintendo had to get a new system out sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But anyway, so in case you were under a rock, a couple of days ago at the Game Awards, we we bore witness to the first opening salvos from both Sony and Microsoft of their new generation of consoles. We got more details on Microsoft because they've actually shown off. It's hard to say the console because they're doing a weird thing.
Well, they were kind of trying to do it last gen, but this gen they seem to be fully going into the, well, you can get this one, but we'll probably release a better one in a certain amount of time that's still backwards compatible and is still technically mostly the same thing, but you'll need the new one to run the newest games or something.
Right. Well, in the initial launch
Or
trailer,
they might make a cheaper one, who knows, with less features, but they can do that too. There's a reason it has series in the name besides joke at the top of the show notwithstanding.
Yeah. Right. Though it's also, here's the thing: the actual name of the console is actually just Xbox. Yes, we've got the lame reboot titles for consoles now as well. Right. But apparently the Series X is for various sub consoles or something along those lines. You know, it's a product line now instead of just a console, which has meant, you know, they did that this generation. You know, we saw the Xbox One X, Xbox One S, like, so
And we have the Xbox One SAD.
right. You know, so they're just taking that line of thinking and making a logical endpoint, basically. You know, it's like we don't know exactly how this is going to work. They didn't really go into that level of detail, given that this is the first time we've seen what the Xbox, what was previously the Scarlet, looked like. And, you know, it's like the circle is complete. Like,
I have heard significant concern about vents being on the top.
I'm like, it's possible. Like I said, we don't know all of the models. We don't know all of the configurations. You know, all we got was the fucking mini tower, the initial reveal. Now, it's like, honestly, at this stage, the idea reminds me of the Steam machines.
Yeah, it's very PC-like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they got the fucking mini tower to boot. You know, it's like, I'm just like, that's a desktop PC.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
You know, it's like, wow, it's finally happened. Like, the merger's complete, isn't it? You know,
It's embraced its destiny.
like, now how all of this will factor into the cloud, Game Pass, whatnot. Once again, we don't exactly know those details. What we do know is it will have full backwards compatibility day one. I'm like, that's kind of what the Microsoft backwards compatibility initiative was all about. You know, they said this when they were doing that. You know, they said what was getting updated was going to be not just for the Xbox One, but for future consoles. You know, it's just, if your game didn't get updated, it wasn't getting updated at all. It's not going to be compatible with anything. And, you know, so it's like, we don't know pricing. Once again, that could be a variable factor. What we do know is one of the games that's been announced. Well, it's like, that's been specifically announced. I'm pretty sure like Halo Infinite is meant for the Xbox.
Yeah.
That's just never going to be a thing that sounds right, considering we've got.
Considering that, yes, we already have the first Xbox, the Xbox One, and now the Xbox.
Yes, I'm like, you know, we're gonna have to call it, like, it's gonna be the Xbox like 2020. Like, there's going to be some designator. You know, it's not gonna be a big problem for like stores, because the original Xbox isn't being sold, unless we're talking secondhand stuff.
Mhm.
I'm like, and
Not to be really careful on eBay and like Craigslist and shit.
Mhm.
yeah, and really, the original Xbox has been rechristened unofficially, but still, it's called the OG Xbox. That happened with the Xbox One, because people called the original Xbox the Xbox One when the Xbox 360 came out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Because
So,
fuck
I
all
really
of you.
still I still really think we should just be on 1080 now.
You're not wrong. I'm like, but this is Microsoft and their dumb naming conventions. Like, it's like they also kind of want to avoid the what happened with the Series X. Like, 2 seconds. That's all it took.
Yeah.
Mhm.
If that.
Yeah, it's like, trust me, it was not. It was not long until we saw the jokes and so on and so forth.
Mhm.
No. Anyway, and alongside that, we got our first glimpse of Hellblade 2. I'm like, which is being hailed as a large, a leap forward in apparently facial animations or something. I'm like, honestly, it's one of those things that you'd have to pay attention to the Digital Foundry to really get every nuance. I'm like, and
Capable of playing games in resolution that your television probably still can't handle.
right, maybe they're monitors, like, but there's still a lot of details that are not known, which is to be expected, since this was the opening shot, like, and on that note, over to the PlayStation 5, I'll give Sony credit. Their naming structure is boring, but you're never going to be confused of what a console is.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Like, it's not just Microsoft that struggled on that front. Looking at you, Mr. Wii U.
Especially because they didn't even show the console most of the time.
I'm not even joking about that. Like, that is one of the biggest things that killed the Wii U. It's like, people, like, they got too cute with the branding.
Yeah, and the
people were like,
casuals thought it was just upgrades for the Wii.
yeah, it's like, and Wii 2 TOO was right there.
Mm-hmm.
It's like,
Super Wii. Wait, hold on.
that would have been like, I think literally anything would have been better than the Wii U. Like, it's hard to. It would be hard to do worse than that. Just on an objective level. We know how bad the Wii U is in terms of sales, in terms of just about everything, in terms of marketability. But this is this isn't about the Wii U. This is about the PlayStation 5. We don't know what the PlayStation 5 looks like. We don't know if Sony's going to do anything with the controller. That's another thing. We didn't see any next generation controllers yet. Like, at least not that I can think of.
I think Microsoft really revealed their new Elite controller or whatever that's supposed to come with it.
Probably. It's like, I don't see Microsoft doing too much to the design.
Yeah.
Like, Sony, ditto. I mean, let's be honest. Sony, the last time Sony tried to get out of the box in terms of controller, we almost got the Batarang. Anyone else remember that?
Yeah, and also
I
almost got a
remember.
violent uprising because it didn't include Rumble.
Well, that was due to a lawsuit.
Yeah.
It's like, that's really not. That's really not a thing of. That's not a thing that they actually sat down and said,
Yeah.
we're going to get rid of Rumble because not having it improves or gameplay or whatever. They got rid of it for a time because they were literally being sued over having that technology in their controller.
Yeah.
They didn't say as much during the lawsuit, but when that was resolved, They let
Yeah,
it.
how quickly all of the alleged excuses they came up with evaporated as soon as it was resolved kind of answers your question there.
And how soon a DualShock 3 came onto the market. I mean, it's like I can't blame Sony for that because it was an external factor. Like there's nothing that can explain the Batarang, and if you don't know what that looks like, just go look it up. It's not
It doesn't look comfortable.
No,
it doesn't.
I'm like, it was mocked pretty ferociously back in the day, which is probably why it stopped being a thing. Once again, Sony hasn't really busted out the innovation since like maybe the original DualShock. But that's fine. The DualShock 4, we got a pad.
The touchpad.
Yeah.
I mean, Sony has never changed their controllers format drastically. Yeah. I mean, they both seem to be sort of generally waltzing in the direction of slightly better ergonomics.
Yes, I suppose so. The overall point is the PlayStation 5, the DualShock 5 is probably what they're going to go with. They could surprise us. It's not 100% certain, but I'm like, given what they showed, I mean, what they showed was the first PlayStation 5 specific game. And that is Godfall, which is actually a third-party title. Oddly enough. Coming from Counterpunch and Gearbox Publishing. Apparently, it's once again, it's a great leap forward in like using the Unreal Engine technology, blah 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 blah. It's like how do I put this? The Xbox and the PlayStation 5 are continuing on being boring evolutions, let's say.
Yeah.
At least at the outset here, like apparently, the big innovation is expected to be whatever the fuck they do with cloud gaming.
Right.
That's what's expected. Like, it's like, quite honestly, like Nintendo, they're the creative ones. Like
for better or for worse.
Yeah, it's like only Nintendo could have produced something like, just so many of their things. Not just consoles, not just games, but peripherals. Like, remember the DK bongo drums?
Yes.
Yep.
It's like that only worked with like 4 games.
Yeah.
That's my point. Like, Nintendo's never quite shed that gadget.
Their toy maker history.
Yeah, the toy maker history. It's also why I miss Sega in the console race because, while they never got the Tinkerer stuff, they were always really ahead of the curve. Like, you look at the Dreamcast and what it was doing. It was online. It had digital distribution. It did a whole bunch of things that, wouldn't be standard for years. But I suppose that's the problem when you unleash this stuff out of time, or when the world's not ready for it, it gets ignored. Like, but yeah, obviously we will have much. As far as Godfall, hard to say. It looks like it looks like a very pretty third-person action game, but I'll be honest, we're definitely hitting the diminishing returns in terms of graphics and gameplay. Like,
because like everybody praised Rise, Son of Rome for looking good, and then it actually came out with shit.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I will also remind you that looking cutting edge is fleeting.
Right. Well, it's like, the thing that gets lost is new technology, more power can allow for new experiences. And that's kind of what the cloud is supposed to be about. It's like one of the big selling factors that the Stadia has been doing. It's like you'll be able to see gameplay, stuff that you couldn't do with a conventional like desktop or console.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, this hasn't materialized, but we'll see if Google is able to struggle along enough to fulfill any of those promises. Anyway, obviously, we'll be talking more about these consoles as they get revealed. Unlike, when we hear the next bit of news.
I'm guessing probably E3.
Probably before that. I'm talking like news in general. Like I'd say, I don't think nobody was expecting to be hearing about next generation talk this year. Quite honestly, so it was a genuine surprise that these things showed up at the Game Awards. But yeah, personally, I'm expecting spring to be hearing more announcements, maybe even a full console reveal. Who knows? Only they do, and they're not saying right now, which makes sense because we're about to head into the Christmas season. So, on that note, that'll about do it for this installment of Fragments Silicon. Once again, this is the final regular show of the year. There will be broadcasting it during the holidays. That's up to Pettyfan for the most part. We might get together, do something informal. We might do something on New Year's, but it's all pretty loose. Until we get back in January. And we'll be starting the new year with some Shovel Knight. We'll be reviewing both Shovel Knight King of Cards and Shovel Knight Showdown. It's like
I should have time to do some multiplayer with Showdown too, so that'll be
right. I'm trying to remember if that's actually online multiplayer. Anyway, we'll figure that out later. But that's the plan for now. So, we wish you a happy holiday season. Whatever you celebrate, there is more than Christmas going on. Happy holidays from the crew of Fragments Silicon, and we wish you good gaming.